I am spiritual, but I am not religious. See, for some people, that statement represents a rejection of religion. For others, it represents a distinction between the institution and the experience. And for many, it is simply an attempt to say, if it's your first time around this neck of the woods, welcome. I am really glad you are here. This is a space where we explore the deep roots of the ideas that quietly shape our lives. It's the ideas that shape how we understand ourselves, how we relate to one another, and how we make meaning in our lives. Especially so today as we explore two words that have become increasingly common in conversations about meaning, identity, and the human search for something more: spirituality and religion. You've probably heard the phrase, "I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious." Maybe you've even said it yourself. It's become such a familiar expression that we sometimes forget to stop and ask what we actually mean by it. What is spirituality? What is religion? Are they really opposites? Can you be spiritual without being religious? And perhaps even more interestingly, when did we begin thinking of them as two different things? There is something we need to understand before we can begin answering those questions, and that has to do with language, specifically the limits of language. See, we often assume that if something has a name, that's where it began. But that's not how language works. Giving something a name doesn't necessarily create the thing itself. Now think about something as ordinary as grief. Human beings experienced loss before they developed psychological language for grief. People loved, people lost, they mourned, they remembered, and they found a way to carry absence. And they did all this long before anyone developed a clinical vocabulary for understanding these experiences. What I'm saying is that in many cases, the experience came first, the language came later. And this happens all the time. We develop words because we're trying to describe something we have already encountered. But that's not all she wrote. Sometimes we don't fully recognize an experience until we have language for it. A person may spend years feeling restless, disconnected, or say dissatisfied without understanding what is happening inside them. Then one day, they encounter a word that gives shape to their experience, and suddenly they think, oh, that's it. That's what I've been experiencing. But even then, notice this. The word didn't create the experience. It simply helped them see the experience. And that distinction matters when we talk about spirituality, because spirituality is not a recent invention simply because the word has become increasingly popular. Human beings have been asking questions about meaning, existence, death, belonging, suffering, purpose, and our relationship to the world around us for a very, very, very long time. Long before we called any of this spirituality. In a sense, before spirituality was spirituality. What I'm trying to nail down here is this. Spirituality didn't suddenly appear when someone invented the word spirituality. The word emerged as one way of talking about dimensions of human life that had already been present for a very long time. For much of human history, what we might today call spirituality wasn't separated from religion. It was embedded within it. Prayer was spiritual. Ritual was spiritual. Contemplation was spiritual. The stories communities told about where they were coming from and why they were here were also spiritual. The thing is, there wasn't necessarily a distinction between being religious and being spiritual. They belonged together. But something began to change, particularly in the modern Western world. People began questioning the authority of religious institutions, and over time, the personal experience of meaning and transcendence became increasingly separated from the institutions that had traditionally carried it. And this is where we begin to recognize the language that has become so familiar to us today. I am spiritual, but I am not religious. See, for some people, that statement represents a rejection of religion. For others, it represents a distinction between the institution and the experience. And for many, it is simply an attempt to say, something along the lines of, there is something about my life that I don't want to reduce to institutional religion. And I think that distinction is important because religion can be a powerful vehicle for the human search for meaning. But religion is not the only vehicle, and spirituality doesn't necessarily begin where religion ends. This is where I think we need to take a step back, because when we talk about spirituality and religion, we can easily start treating these as two competing categories, as though human beings have to choose one. But underneath both of these labels is something much older, something much more fundamental. And it is the fact that humans pursue meaning. We've always done this, and to some extent, we always will. Think about it. We tell stories because we're trying to understand where we come from and where we're going. We create rituals to give shape to experiences that matter. We form communities because meaning is rarely something we construct entirely on our own. We search for purpose. We try to understand our place in the world. We encounter mystery, and then we try to make sense of it. What I'm saying is that we did all of this before we had the modern vocabulary of spirituality and religion. And I think this is precisely where these labels can sometimes get in the way. Once we give something a name, we can begin to mistake the name for the thing itself. We can start defending the label instead of examining the experience underneath it. And we can end up arguing about whether spirituality is better than religion or religion is better than spirituality, while missing the deeper human impulse that gave rise to both, which is the pursuit of meaning. I often use the term spirituality in my work because, for me, it embraces something broader than religion. It can include religion. It can include cultural traditions. It can include institutional traditions, but it can also reach beyond them. It allows us to talk about the ways human beings search for meaning, encounter mystery, develop practices, tell stories, form communities, and try to understand what it means to be alive. And honestly, in my work, I use this label, as a communicative tool. It gives us a word we can use to talk about something much bigger and older than the word itself. But that's all it is. It's a tool. And I think sometimes we get ourselves into trouble when the tool becomes more important than what we're actually trying to describe. Now, at the end of the day, when it comes to this subject matter, here is what's important to me. Here is what I can best describe as the burden of my soul. And I'm going to phrase it in a question. See, regardless of the road you have chosen in your pursuit of meaning, whether you chose that road yourself or you inherited it, the question is, what do you do when the road you've chosen stops taking you somewhere? At one time, the road you chose for your meaning making gave you meaning. It helped you understand yourself. It helped you understand the world. It gave you community. It gave you language for the things you were experiencing. But then something changed. The path no longer seemed to make sense. You begin asking questions the path could not answer. You encountered experiences that didn't fit neatly within the framework you had been given. And look, I know many of you watching this can relate to what I'm talking about. If the path you've chosen has reached a dead end, be honest enough to recognize it. You don't have to hate the road because it brought you to that place. You don't have to deny what it gave you. And you certainly don't have to attack people who are still walking it. But you can turn around. You can explore another path. And who knows, you may discover another road that helps you see the old one differently. You may find that there were paths intersecting all along, but somehow you simply couldn't see from where you were standing. See, that's the beauty of the pursuit of meaning. The journey doesn't have to end just because one road does. So, perhaps that's my invitation to you today. Don't become rigid about the label. Don't become so attached to religion that you can no longer imagine meaning outside of it. And don't become so attached to spirituality that you automatically assume religion has nothing left to offer. Don't confuse the map with the territory. And don't confuse the road with the destination. Because underneath all of these words and categories is something deeply human. We, yes, talking to you, you and I are meaning-making creatures. We pursue meaning. We encounter mystery. We tell stories. We create practices. We form communities. We ask questions. And we change. Quick one before I let you go, just a quick word about Patreon. This reflection first appeared on Patreon before making its way here. In fact, Patreon is where every reflection begins. At the Home of Meaning, we believe that life-giving reflections should remain accessible to everyone. That's why our conversations and reflections will always be available to all. If this conversation resonates with you, I would love to invite you to join our free Patreon community and become part of the vision behind the Home of Meaning. I'll leave the link in the description below. And as always, thank you for being here. Because learning to change as the ways through which we pursue meaning invite us to change truly matters.